also create a little sound. So, all right. So for today's practice, just setting up my screen here. Okay. So for today's practice, what you should have as far as props go is some type of strap. So if you don't have a yoga strap, even just a hand towel is going to work, because we're going to do hamstring stretches. And also what I'm recommending is, if you do have a pair of blocks or one block, have those ready. We'll be doing just, I think, one thing, kneeling. So if you need a blanket for that, or if you use a cushion for sitting, you might want a cushion. But other than that, usually I don't request a strap or a couple of blocks. And yeah, that's what I'm recommending for today. And the strap we're going to use right away. The blocks will be a little bit later on in practice. So. Oh, good. Okay. Looks like most of you now have your tools. So we'll go ahead and start out with centering. So centering, you can get comfortable however you would like. As I mentioned, we're going to use a strap. That's going to be right at the beginning of practice. And after we center, we'll be lying back. So I always like to say, if you like to be efficient, maybe you lie down to start centering. If you don't always like to lay on your back for a long time, then you might choose to start out centering seated, and then we'll go on to the back in just a moment. But however you want to set up, go ahead and take that moment to get comfortable. If it makes sense for you to close your eyes, go ahead and close your eyes. I always forget to mention, if you have like favorite music that you like to play, you could always put some music on. And then start to notice your breath. Oftentimes when we are breathing out of habit, we're breathing each and every moment, our breath tends to be a little bit more shallow than our potential. But you also don't want to try to draw so much breath in that all of a sudden you're straining or creating tension into your other systems, like your nervous system. And so as you start to focus on the breath, if it feels like there's room for capacity or extra breath, just start to notice and expand the breath. If you're able to bring a larger breath into your body with smoothing without strain, then that last part of centering, just notice where the breath goes. Are you breathing a little bit more towards the chest? Are you breathing down to the belly? Notice for just a moment where your mind went. Is it on the breath? Did it wander just a bit away? It's okay. Take just one more moment with this centering practice. If there is a way in which you'd like to show up for yoga, maybe picture what that would be like. You show up in a calm space? Do you show up in a energetic space? Let's take a couple more breaths here. And if you have any specific intention around even just thinking about how you want to show up for yoga, maybe that is your intention, or maybe you have something else, another purpose that you like to set as a focus for your practice. And then if you need any more time, take all the time you need. If you're ready to shift towards setting up for that hamstring stretch, you can start to make your way onto your back if you're not there. Hopefully with a strap within reach. And then the other thing is you might want just a little support underneath your head and neck. So you could put like a blanket underneath there if you need it. And sometimes it takes a little bit for your body or spine to settle onto a floor, or onto your mat. So sometimes just gentle rocking side to side is going to feel nice. All right. So what I'd like to offer here as far as setting up for opening up the back of the legs, we're going to begin with floating or drawing one knee in towards the belly. And I like to use the strap over the top of the shin and then just gently draw that leg in towards the belly. Now you could, of course, interlace the fingers and hug the leg in. That's completely an option too. And here, go ahead and wiggle through the toes, circle the ankle around a couple ways and a couple passes. And then let's start to shift this towards looping the strap around the ball of the foot. And go gentle on the hamstrings. Sometimes they're really tight, so you might bend and extend the leg a couple times. And you might even keep the legs somewhat bent as you begin to hold for the hamstring stretch. If it creates a lot of strain on the wrists and your strap is long enough, go ahead and wrap the strap around your hands to hopefully take out a strain on the wrists. And then you can also explore where that stretch is set up, right? You can draw the leg away from the body, you can draw it in. Again, you don't want to be forceful with the hamstrings. And then another way that this can really change as far as sensation is that other leg. You can have the knee bent and foot planted, or you can bring that leg long on the mat. Now, that deeper breath that we cultivated with centering, imagine that you can take that breath all the way down to the back of your leg. Sending the breath or intention for softness and centering can sometimes intensify a hamstring stretch. So again, just be in a space where you're not straining too much in the leg as you breathe into this space. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and bring both ends of the strap into the same hand as the leg that you're holding up. And we're going to do a sort of modified single leg or half happy baby pose, where now once again, hug the knee towards the belly and bring the leg a little wider. So we're going to get a little bit more into the side of the hip. You can spread the toes. You can really push the ball of the foot against your strap, and you're going to really hold the strap against the leg. Take one more breath with this, and then go ahead and release the leg. Just taking a moment to compare the two different sides. I can even feel in my own body that I feel like one leg is about 2 inches longer than the other after that. But if you don't notice necessarily like leg length, or that visual doesn't come to you, does it feel like one hip is a little bit more grounded into the floor? Does it feel like one leg is maybe more relaxed than the other? If you had to breathe down to your hips or down to your hamstrings, does it feel like the breath goes easier on one side than the other? All right, so let's go ahead and set up the other side. And again, you might start out with interlacing the fingertips over the top of the shin. I kind of prefer hugging in with a strap over the top of the shin, just gives my shoulders a little bit more space. But whatever feels right for you. You might also use this as an opportunity to wake up the joints, right? You could wiggle through the toes there. You can circle through that ankle. And then let's start to switch this into strapping the ball of the foot. And as you do this, again, just give your hamstrings a little bit of warm up, whether you simply bend and extend the leg sometimes. Sometimes you straighten the leg and it's perfectly fine to receive the stretch, but you also just don't want to strain. So the leg does not have to go straight up to the sky. It might be slightly in front, it might be slightly behind. And then that other leg, again, you can have the knee bent. That usually protects the back a little bit more. So if you have some back sensitivity, it might make sense to have that leg bent and the foot planted, or you can extend that other leg. And the invitation here, once again, just to kind of feel what's all happening in the body when we do a hamstring stretch. I mean, it is called a hamstring stretch, so there's a good indicator that we're probably doing a lot with the hamstrings, which is true. But we're also getting some deep hip flexion, so we're doing stuff for the hips. Our glute muscles are usually involved with this in some way, so our seat muscles. Notice if it feels like the posture shifts over time, where maybe the intensity of the stretch all of a sudden feels like, oh, I have more space or something relaxed. It's not that you have to go once again into intensity, but you can add depth to the stretch if you need to. And then let's go ahead and pass both ends of the strap into the one side. And you can keep the tension on the strap as you start to bend into the knee and bring that leg out wide. So this will get a little bit more into those hips. This is like a half happy baby pose. Let's take one more breath with this. And then you can go ahead and exhale, release that leg, release the strap. We are actually done with the strap. So if some way it feels like the strap is in your way, you can get it off of your mat. You can toss it across the room if you want. Whatever you need to do. All right, so there are several ways you can get up off of the floor. You can do you can sort of rock and roll up to a seat. You can roll to your side and be a little bit more gentle for the back. Whatever you're needing, take your time. We're going to do one thing seated. So you can, again, make your way up to the seat how you would like. Maybe it's rolling up. Maybe it's rolling to the side. All right, so, and how does your spine feel after some of that work? We're going to keep working with the hamstrings today, but we just want to create a little link through the side body. We're going to do a seated side stretch, then move on. So seated side stretch, if you're closer to the floor, you'll simply bring your hand to the side or possibly in a block if you need it, and then reach that other arm up and over. And similar to our hamstrings, we're trying to create length and space. When we do a side stretch like this, it is this idea that you can reach out through the fingertips, but at the same time, you're going to take the same hip and anchor it to the floor. That also helps build length through the side of the body. And so we can test this out. We'll take one more breath into this side. And as you exhale, let's come back to center, noticing the difference between the two sides, whether you breathe into the lungs and notice the capacity of the lungs. Maybe you think about it and how your shoulders feel. And again, we won't stay lopsided. You can simply sit up on the other side in a moment or when you're ready. All right, take one more inhale here. Exhale, let's come back up towards the seat. Go ahead and just shake out the hands like you are air drying them, kind of loosening up the fingers, the wrists, especially after holding the straps. Sometimes there's a little tension that remains in those wrists. You can wiggle the fingers and circle the wrists as well. And then we're going to go ahead and set up for cow and cat pose. So you can stay seated if you prefer, or if you would like, you can set up for kneeling. Kneeling, you can, or hands and knees, you can always pat up the knees. You can support the wrists, whatever you need to do. I know they often demonstrate the knee thing because I know that that serves my practice well. But if you're someone that it really just is uncomfortable having hands into the mat and it really gets into the wrist strain, it's not worth it to just move through the spine for this. I like to set up blocks to take out strain for the wrists. If you still want your hands into the mat, you could bring your hands to the blocks and wrap those fingers around. That will be a little bit more ergonomic. Or you can take out the equation of the wrists altogether. And if you put the blocks, I usually do medium height, and you have one under each forearm. This way your forearms don't go all the way to the floor, which feels like you're dumping into the shoulders, but you're still getting, so you're getting the height you need for cow-cat pose, but without the strain of the wrists. So if you found a way that you feel comfortable moving through cow-cat pose, let's go ahead and start to create that movement. Rolling around the spine for cat. Soften the belly, lift the heart for cow pose. You might want to get into other spaces along the spine. You might round into one side or the other. And then let's just do a little bit for our calves and feet. So just come to a long spine for a moment. Adjust the hands or knees if you need to. But for this calf stretch, you simply extend one leg out, tuck the toes under, and then if it's comfortable enough, you can simply rock forward and back to get into that calf. If you press back and that feels good to hold, go ahead and do that. You're stretching through your foot, your calf muscle, also the hamstring. It may be a little less intense because we kind of already woken some of that up, and the calf muscle, usually you can feel that quite a bit. All right, let's go ahead and bring that leg back underneath. You can tap out the tops of that foot if you need to, and then let's go ahead and do the other side. So again, extend the leg, toes tuck under. And it might feel good to simply rock a little forward and back, unless that does not feel good for the knees. And simply find a place to hold where you're stretching through the feet and through that calf muscle. All right, go ahead and bring that knee back underneath. We're going to transition to our feet next. And so one way to do that would be going through downward facing dog. Another way could be like a knee lunge lift up, which we've done sometimes in practice, or you can use the support of a chair or the arm or the wall to get up. But if you're doing downward facing dog, go ahead and tuck both toes under. Make sure that the shoulders feel nice and strong, whether the arms are long or if you are on the forearms. And then start to lift those hips up high and then back. For downward facing dog, you could take a little bit here if this feels nice for your spine. You could pedal through the feet. And eventually we'll all meet on the feet together in standing. So from downward facing dog, you could walk hands and feet towards each other. If a forward fold feels good, stay there for a breath or two. And you can round and roll up to mountain pose. All right. So once you're on your feet, if you need to clear stuff off of your mat, you can. We're going to use the blocks here in just a moment, so you can keep them there or find them. And then what I'm going to recommend, if you have two blocks, you're going to kind of have them right in front of your feet. If you have one block, you're going to put it right in between the feet. So does not matter what position they're in right now. Higher is more challenging. Low position is a little bit easier, but when I say that, it's still challenging. We're going to do just a simple toe touch here. So first, standing in mountain pose, feel both feet strong into the floor. And then go ahead and shift a little bit more to the right foot than the left. And the intention here is that you're going to pick up the left foot and you're going to tap the toes onto that block. And then bring the foot back down. From there, let's go ahead and shift over into the other foot and tap and return. Taking a moment each time to find your center between both feet and then shift over into the first side again. Tap the toe and lower, center, other side, tap and lower. So we're just doing a little bit of balance work right here in the beginning of practice. Make sure you do at least one more time each side. And then go ahead and pause. Mountain pose. Now, with a lot of the work that we're doing, we are going to do warrior postures, which is what we typically do. But with what we're doing a little later in practice, what's a little different is I like the analogy here that you think of the toes, the feet, the legs that stay in alignment, almost like they are mirrored or train tracks. And so with that in mind, go ahead and glide or track the right foot back just enough so that ideally the toes stay the same direction, the kneecaps stay the same direction. And you might feel that sort of interplay with the calf stretch. If where you're at doesn't feel much of anything, you can of course take more distance. But if you practice yoga a lot, or at least I find people tend to want to spin that heel in with this prep, which is, our warrior stances, try to keep the feet a little bit more parallel or on train tracks. So we're just feeling that center in between both feet. And then you can go ahead and bring that back leg forward, and we'll bring that sort of train track or step back with the other leg. And again, there might be a little spin in, but ideally feet are pretty parallel. We're not train tracks, so like I said, don't get too fussed over the toes being very parallel or straight, just so that if you've got a sense that you're getting a pretty deep stretch, calf stretch, or at least that's where I feel it. Could be hamstrings as well, but that you're getting pretty deep stretch with this setup. I'm going to take one more breath here, and then let's go ahead and step to mountain pose. Bring those hands to heart center for a moment. Draw in strong through the belly, and then on your next inhale, go ahead and float the arms up to the sky. Exhale, let's go ahead and take a forward fold. Now in this forward fold, you could let your upper body completely dangle. If you got those blocks nearby, you might gently rest the hands on blocks. And then from this forward fold, let's go ahead and roll back up, mountain pose. If you tend to get a little dizzy with that, go ahead and take a moment in mountain pose. Set yourself up so that you're close enough to the blocks. We're going to do that little toe tap one more time. So once you get set up in mountain pose, go ahead and shift over into that right leg, peel or pick up the left, tap the toes, lower, shift over into the other side, lift the opposite foot, tap the toe to the block, and lower. All right, so if the blocks are in your way for warrior, you could slide them out to the side, but we are going to use them in just a little bit later in practice. But for now, you can bring hands to heart center, shift over into your right foot more than your left, and we're going to take a step back for warrior 2. So again, you can take a big step back. Now you can turn those toes out, right, and bend into the knee. And then once you feel nice and strong in the legs, the glute muscles are active, belly muscles are active, go ahead and reach those arms out in opposite direction. Strong warrior. Notice if the legs do feel active, wrap those muscles around the bones. Let's go ahead and flip the right palm up to the sky, and then reach it up and back for goddess warrior. And let's open back up through warrior 2, and then bring it forward into extended side angle. Use core strength, use those strong leg muscles to lift you back up to warrior 2. And then bring hands to heart center. We're going to simply pivot on our mat to go to the other side. So you're going to extend the right leg. You can bring all 10 toes to the wide side of your mat, and now point the left toes to the back and bend into that knee. So we're in that same frame. If you never knew if you created the same distance in warrior 2 on each side, this is a good way to figure that out. If you're moving the feet, that's okay. But it's sometimes just good information to know about yourself. So now the left foot's leading, wrap those leg muscles again. If you start to kind of settle into the posture, make it a little brighter, flip the left palm up to the sky and reach it up and back for goddess warrior. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, open through warrior two, and then coming into extended side angle, other side. Legs are strong. Feel expansive and long in your body. Take one more inhale here. And then using that leg strength and belly strength to lift back up, warrior two. You can bring hands to heart center. And now let's just bring it to the wide side of the mat. So you can straighten that left leg. You can bring all 10 toes to the wide side of the mat, and you can heel toe or step those feet together, however it serves you best. Okay, just a little different way to come out of warrior two postures. So this is also a good place that if you need a drink of water, not sure what everybody's temperature is. Last night, it was kind of a gauge of some people had not turned on their air yet. Some people are like, oh yeah, I turned on 2 days ago. So hopefully you're keeping cool enough or at least hydrated. All right, so this next part, I talked about blocks, but I just also want you to know that if you have a chair or a couch nearby, you can use that as a support. I've actually got this folding chair that I sometimes practice with, and see how I just kind of lay that out in front of or over my blocks. You can use this. We're going into pyramid pose practice. If going too low is not a good option for your legs or for heart health or whatever concern you have, hands to the seat of a chair is always a great option to work in pyramid pose. So just so you know, I'm going to demonstrate on blocks as we get there, but just know that if like this whole practice, you're about ready to curse me out because your hamstrings are starting to kind of scream at you, you might want to bring a chair or find a table. But if you're doing well with this and it's okay to go low enough to the blocks, I usually set them up in the highest height. And again, if you just have one, you're bringing it right in the center of your 2 feet. If you got 2 blocks, they're just kind of right in front of your feet. All right, so when we start to do pyramid pose, it's almost like that setup before. You're going to simply track or draw that right foot back. Ideally, the feet are kind of in that train track plane where mostly they're looking forward. I like to use my hips as a kind of feedback tool to lower down. So your waist is up here. If you bring your hands to your waist and then direct your fingertips down, wherever your fingertips are, that's usually about where your hips are. So if you lower the hands to where you can feel the hips, as you come forward, you want to keep the legs straight here. You want to keep the spine relatively long. And this might also give you feedback of where you want to end up for pyramid pose. So as you're hinging down, if it seems like those blocks are within reach, you're going to go ahead and bring those hands to the blocks. Ideally, you're getting this nice straight line, right? Nice long back, nice long legs. The exit strategy for this always is bend into the joints, right? So you can always bend those knees if things are getting a little too tight. Otherwise, pyramid pose, this is where we're at, right? If you're not feeling much of a stretch, now this is a lot for most people in the hamstrings. So you don't have to do more. Less is more with hamstrings, right? They like a long-term relationship. They don't like anything quick. But if you're like, I don't really feel much of a stretch, then you're going to take your front hip. So if it's your right hip, you're drawing it back. Your left hip is drawing forward. So internally, you're not going to see much. It's just a small movement, but usually that intensifies anybody who kind of doesn't think they feel much of a stretch of anything. Now to come out of this, we're going to find a forward fold. You can simply bend into both legs just enough and then step that back foot forward. And then you're in a forward fold. Now, once you get to that forward fold, go ahead and round and curl that spine. If you need to be higher, that is okay. Right, hands to the seat of a chair or hands to your thighs. And then let's come back up to standing. for a moment. Good. So from what I could tell, everybody did really good with that. We've got the other side. So we're going to get into kind of the deep of it on the other side, but always just take care of you if you need to just kind of shake out those legs. The sides of the hips can sometimes tense up with some of the work we're doing. So you might step a little wider and rock side to side. Now, I think for most of you, it looked like your right leg was leading. So now we're going to do left side, or just make sure you have the other leg forward. But as we set this up, again, you can gently train track or bring one leg back, one leg forward. Hands not to the hips, but or not to the waist, but the hips. So a little lower. And then you're going to try and keep that spine nice and long as you come forward. Now, if blocks or whatever you have set up in front of you is not close enough, you could bring your hand to your thigh. You just want to keep that nice tabletop spine as you come forward. You want to keep the legs relatively long. They don't have to be hyperextended or locked out, but relatively straight. But always know your exit strategy is bending into both knees if you need it. Pyramid pose. Take some nice full breaths all the way down the length of the legs. All right, good work, everyone. From here, if you need to bend the knees a little bit, step that back foot forward. So you're in a forward fold. And again, you can bend the knees even further once you get into that fold. You can round the spine. You can come up higher if that's better for your body. And then from that forward fold, let's go ahead and roll all the way up to standing. All right, so kind of in complement or a companion to this work we're already doing. Now we all have these really long hamstrings. You're probably all like 5 inches taller than when you started practice. But we're going to actually do standing needle as our balance posture. The thing about standing needle is if you bring your hands to your block, your head does usually get lower than your hips, or it will be lower than your heart. And so then it becomes also an inversion. So if you know that's not good for you, instead of thinking of bringing your hands to the block, I want you to again consider either setting your hands up to the seat of a chair or even hands to a wall space. So I'm not going to stay in this, but just so you know where we're going, because I don't do standing needle that often in class. But wherever your floor is, whether it's a pair of blocks or the floor, you want to think of that nice long spine we've already created in pyramid pose. And then you're going to do, this is also called the standing splits. I do not have standing split range, but you're going to lift a leg, right? So this can be done again on a pair of blocks. This can be done at a wall space. Sorry for having to see the bottom of my foot, but you know, it doesn't have to be lower than the head. So I was just visually showing you where you're going. If you're already in it, you can stay there. But otherwise, if you're just about ready to prep for it and follow along with me, find where you're going to bring into your floor. Find your long spine. So whether it's hands into a block, hands into a wall, long spine. Long spine means you shouldn't feel pressure into the shoulders or the middle of the back or the low back, right? And then from there, think about really firing up your leg muscles. And then from there, shifting your weight into one standing leg and lifting that other leg. Wrap the leg muscles so the leg doesn't feel like it is weighing 10 times more than it does, right? So use the energy of your belly strength, drawn strong there. Spread the toes, push through the heel of that standing leg. Good, keep going, keep a nice long neck and shoulders. And then let's go ahead and release standing needle on this side so you can lower that leg. Again, you can think about rounding the spine from there. You can bend the knees a lot with that. Ragdoll can be nice, but also we have been upside down for quite a bit of time. So if you need a moment, not being upside down. You'll have to roll up to a mountain pose. Good. So a lot of you were in that for a lot longer than I planned on, but that's great as long as you're doing okay. I just don't want you to be too lightheaded or dizzy going to the other side. So we're going to give a little bit of time before we go to the other side. But everybody did really great with this. So if you're like, I was wobbling all over the place, that's the practice, right? So balance is that challenge. And not only are we doing balance, but we're doing balance and an inversion. So all right, so let's go ahead and try that other side. So when you're ready, again, you're wanting to initiate a certain way. You want to set your body up for success and finding the strength and grace of the pose. So that spine should feel nice and long, right? So if you're rounded or you feel rounded, try to imagine that your back is a tabletop. And that might be another reason why instead of setting up on blocks, you set up at a chair or a table or something. Okay. And then from there, from that nice long spine, you're going to grab or really engage those muscles, right? So leg muscles are going to wrap to the bone. And you're going to use that strength to begin to lift or send that leg back. Again, it can go as high as it wants. I do not do splits. So I'm going as high as I can to stay nice and stable and steady. If the toes come 2 inches off of the mat, that is okay as well. But lift the leg, let the leg feel nice and part of your body. Keep the strength going so it's not just hanging out there. Squeeze the glutes, squeeze the legs, squeeze the belly. Also, if you feel like those shoulders came right up towards your ears, track the shoulders back, grow through the length of the neck. Nice adjustments, everyone. From what I was seeing, it was just getting a little tight in the shoulders. We're going to take one more breath here in standing needle. And then you can go ahead and release that foot down. Again, a forward fold, bending the knees a lot, swaying side to side might feel really lovely. But if you're a little sensitive to being upside down for a long time, you might want to spend a little less time in that forward fold and come up to standing and just do some gentle movements for the hips. So you can do things like circle the hips if you're standing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have done standing needle before for practice, but it's been a while. Thought I'd vary up our balance posture. So, all right, so we have one more seated posture. And I'm going to cue through downward facing dog to get there. But if you might not need the blocks for the rest of the practice, so you can clear those out. If you know you want knee padding for your knees, you might go ahead and set that up for yourself. And again, be safe in your body always. But if you want to follow my flow through downward facing dog, on your next inhale, go ahead and reach those arms up to the sky. Exhale, take a forward fold. You can bend the knees enough now to get the hands down to the mat. Downward facing dog, you can stay here for a little bit. Or if you prefer not to, you're going to gently lower those knees. You could do child's pose for a little bit. So we are going to do a seated spinal twist. That's where we're headed. You could set up a cushion for yourself or elevate those hips if you'd like. You can, of course, sit right on the mat if you need to. Whatever prop you would like, or no prop. I always forget to say, like, you don't have to have props if you don't want to. I, of course, have a love and passion about props. They make my practice 1,000 times better, maybe 1,000,000 times better if I'm being dramatic about it all. But yeah, props are good. So just make sure that you take care of your body using the support and tools that we have. Once you find a comfortable tall spine, you're going to once again think about I always kind of like the visual of, the turtle that can be in the shell and then he can kind of stick his head out and grow nice and long. So if you want to think about that nice length that a turtle can create just by looking into the world, right? Lifting out of its shell. From that nice long tall spine, we're going to take an inhale and exhale. Let's rotate over to the right. So you can bring that left hand over to the right thigh. Right hand can come to the floor or corner edge of your prep if you are elevated. Linking each vertebra together, bone by bone by bone. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, come back to center. Once again, emerge and lengthen. Take an inhale and then exhale. Let's twist to the other side. It's interesting, like usually the forecast that I always used to look at just shared temperature, but over the past few weeks, excuse me, it's been talking about like air quality. And I did notice like today there's a high pollen count, and yeah, I can kind of, my nose is like twitching like the bewitched lady. Just cannot stop itching it. So I can tell there's a lot of pollen in the air, even though I'm inside. Take one more inhale in the spinal twist and exhale. Let's come back to center. Anyway, I hope you're breathing and everything else is doing well, but it definitely seems like the world that we live in, there are definitely things in the environment that can impact our breath capacity. So we're going to start to head to the floor, and you might want to just have anything that you want for Shavasana nearby, but we're going to do a little bit of movement before Shavasana. So anything that you usually use to close out your practice or you think you might want, just gather that for yourself and then make your way onto your back. The work that we're doing, it might feel nice to have a little support underneath your head and neck. If you were here last week, I believe we did this, but it's okay if you weren't. We're just going to finish with some softer hip work today. And so how I like to set this up is first, have the feet together or touch if that works for you. If you have back sensitivities, just know that don't necessarily windshield wiper as big as or as range as you can. Be gentle, minimize the movement side to side as you rock side to side, and see how that feels for your back and spine. If it's okay, then you can go fuller. Fuller doesn't mean more masterful. You want to be nice. This should be feeling good for your back and spine. And so if it's not, go more gentle. All right, we're going to pause the rocking back and forth and now step the feet about hip width apart. So the feet distance themselves a little bit, and you can kind of do that same sort of testing the waters before you go full range. You might simply just rock a little side to side. You might notice that this goes a little bit higher up in the spine, but also a little bit more targeted into the hip socket itself. And again, if everything's fine, you simply let gravity take the knees side to side. I have a somewhat cranky SI joint and I can feel a little pop or rock. So just again, if you are someone prone to hip stuff, just be mindful of that for yourself. It feels good actually for that to happen, even though it probably sounds disturbing. Let's come back to center. And then the last piece of this is bringing those feet wide, maybe the width wide. And again, you can go very gentle to start as you start rocking side to side. This one gets into our sacroiliac area, so the low part of the spine, and really targeted into the hip socket. And again, you can let gravity take the knees if that's comfortable. I find that this one gives a little bit more IT band stretch and also a quadricep stretch, so the front and the side of the legs. But again, everyone's a little different. And then you can pause this movement. You can go ahead and walk those feet in closer together. And let's come into reclined figure four. So from knees bent, feet planted, you can cross one ankle over the thigh. If you are in a pretty good hip stretch, we're going to be here for about a minute. You can stay as is. Some of you might find drawing the leg in a little closer towards the belly gets a better stretch or something that feels right for you. So just explore what space is best for your stretch sensation. We're trying to now get into specifically the glutes, but many of us have tighter IT bands, and you might also feel it along the side of the leg. Certainly, you don't want to feel straighten into the joints though. So make sure this doesn't feel like pressure in the knee or the ankle or the hip socket. All right, let's go ahead and switch to the other side. So anchor the feet for a moment. You can shake that out if you need to, butterfly the legs or hug the knees in towards the belly. And then let's go ahead and set that up on the other side. Sometimes we know that our second side is a little tighter. Sometimes it's indifferent, but 3 more breaths unless you need more time. And after that, it might feel good to hug the knees in towards the belly and rock side to side. You can start to set up for Shavasana when you're ready. If there's a posture we didn't do that you need for your practice, you might go ahead and do that for yourself. And then finding that comfortable space for your practice. That might be that you bring a cushion or rolled blanket underneath the knees. You might have support underneath your head. You might find it more peaceful or comfortable to sit upright or lay on your side or belly. So all of this is welcome. We have our mind, our body, our spirit that we all focus on in a yoga practice. Today we did do a lot with the body and the muscles. So as you're leading towards Shavasana, just make sure that you scan your body. Notice if there's any muscles that can relax that are still trying to work hard for you. Relax the belly, the hips. Relax the muscles around the spine. Relax the shoulders, the jaw. Release the breath. Final Shavasana. Shavasana does not need to be limited by any time. You might choose to stay here a little longer. It is okay. If you're in a space where you would like to bring some movement and awareness back to your body, you can start very gently, maybe breathing a little fuller. Take your time. There is no rush. You can awaken with some small body movements like fingers and toes. Or rotating through wrists and ankles, but again, take your time. There is no hurry. Whether you continue to add movements or maybe even stretch out through your body, you might even close at your side. Just offering any type of way in which you'd like to lead into the rest of your day. Yoga can be a powerful ritual or practice that brings us self-maintenance in our bodies, taking care of our body to maintain balance with our mind, our physical well-being. And so maybe there's some piece of this practice that you'd like to share into the rest of your day. It could be simply that yoga brings you joy. And so you lead into your day with joy. If you are ready to close together in community, you can find your way towards a comfortable seat once again, but also know that there is no need to rush. Do so in your own time. You are part of this community. When we think of taking care of ourselves, there is a mudra that kind of connects that, which is Haikini mudra. This is the mudra where we touch each tip of fingertip to the opposite fingertip. And essentially you try to form a globe or a rounder space with your hands. And then your hands can rest comfortably against your body, however that feels right for you. And it's in this space that I would like to offer an Om to close. We'll exhale, inhale, and then Om. So whenever you're ready, exhale out all the air in your body. Take a deep breath in. The light, the joy, and the care and kindness within me honors and sees that light, that joy, and that care and kindness within you. Thank you for bringing your presence into this space today. Namaste. All right. I will stay on if anybody needs anything. Otherwise, have a lovely day, everyone. I will stop the recording now.